Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Preserving History and Democracy podcast. My name is Caroline Zamora, and I'm the Chief Deputy County Clerk. Today, we have a very special episode with just our amazing podcast team because this is our season 4 recap. Real quick, personally, I want to thank our amazing team, Jacob behind camera, who edits. He does all the TikTok videos. We don't get this podcast done without Jacob Slaughter, so thank you, Jacob, producer, editor extraordinaire. I want to thank Cynthia Mendoza, our communications coordinator, who makes all of this happen. She keeps us on schedule and on track, and also for her great radio voice. I also want to thank Bernardine Caporale, Miss Bern, who is our researcher extraordinaire and who's been doing an amazing job bringing us such wonderful episodes this year. So, ladies and Jacob behind camera, we did 20 episodes this year.
We did. This is our 20th.
This season. Yeah, yes. This season.
Pretty awesome. I think every other season, for the most part, has been maybe 12, 14, 15, but...
And that's kind of what I thought was going to happen. And then y'all just kept going. And I was like, all right, let's do it. Why not?
Just kept getting those
we did just keep going.
Yeah.
We did.
Yeah. And so awesome. The episodes just kept coming and coming. And I was like, these are such good episodes. Like, it's such fun and good content. I'm just loving it. So, okay, so let's run through the recap. Cynthia, I know you have videos up.
Right.
I know, Jacob, you're going to be putting some of the previous episodes and the videos as we're talking into the episode. So let's start with video, episode 1, which was Romance at the Rotunda.
All right. So Romance at the Rotunda was our first episode, like you said. This was back in February, and we featured Lenora Hawkins, which is one of our document technicians. And then we also had Luis and Belinda Vega, who were married at Romance at the Rotunda.
I married them last year.
Yes.
So one of the things that I really loved about this episode was when we had Lenora on the podcast, and it was her first time being on the podcast. But also I love talking to the couple, Luis and Belinda, because they were so sweet and wonderful, and they really talked about how the process was for them.
Yeah.
The process with our staff, because our staff does a great job for that event.
Absolutely.
It's very unique. I don't know many other counties that do an event like that throughout New Mexico. And so we really do a fantastic job at that event. So that was one of my favorite kind of memories from that episode.
Yeah. I just think it was so cool getting to hear their love story. They shared videos of their engagement, and, you know, it was so sweet to hear how they met and fell in love and then ended up at our event, which is pretty cool.
I love that Lenora said yes to me when I asked her to be on the podcast. And she did a great job with the marriage licenses. She
does.
Yeah.
Let's go ahead and jump into episode 2, which was with community development featuring Christopher Valencia.
He kind of talked about how our offices collaborate and, you know, get things done for our community. So it was a pretty incredible and very informative episode.
It was. And I like that Chris came in and volunteered his time for us to make something so worthwhile.
Yeah.
Because honestly, I don't work at the front that much.
Yeah.
And I see Chris in all the time. He always has a good morning wave for me. But I don't know what he's doing there until this episode.
Yeah, and I think that was great for our audience to hear as well.
Right.
So I'm excited to have other departments in and kind of talk about how we all work together to get things done around
Right.
here.
Let's talk about episode 3, which was a Romance at the Rotunda recap, just kind of recapping what that event was.
Yes.
So be sure to check that out. And we do Romance at the Rotunda every Valentine's Day. So if you want to get married, that's a good one to come and do that at. So episode 4, we talked about business licenses, and we featured another staff member from here at the county, from here in our office, Tammy Goodman. And I thought that was such a fun. Tammy's so much fun.
She is. She makes me laugh just with her facial expressions. And she had no fear about coming in and doing that.
Good.
Which was awesome. She told us about how the business licenses work and the process that you have to go through in order to be recognized by the county as a legit business. And that's the goal.
Yeah. I think one of my favorite parts from that episode was when she was talking about a business that's been around for like 100 years. And she said how they keep obviously having to renew their license, and that they just have all these stories about their business. I guess it was ran through the family and stuff. So that was pretty cool to hear.
That is really cool.
She actually told me the other day that she's streamlining some things, making some changes to the process with the help of Angelica and others. And it's going to be even easier coming up in the future. Yes.
I
excited to hear
love
it.
that.
Yeah.
What I think is also really unique about Tammy is also she was a realtor and she was also in title work. And so her experience from those two things, of course, if you have to file a deed. So when you purchase a property, it gets filed here in our office. So that kind of knowledge that she has from the other side of the house, I think is really important. So that when a title company calls, and we have several title companies and they're, recording documents every day. I mean, hundreds of documents every day.
Right.
So her knowledge in that area is also incredibly beneficial to our office.
Yeah, no, she's definitely appreciated.
Cool. So episode 5, we talked to another staff member, Nicholas Moreno, Nick from our Bureau of Elections warehouse. And that was a fun episode. I wasn't on that episode, but you all got to talk to Nick. But it was a very fun episode. So what do you all remember from that one?
He told us a lot about how the elections warehouse does stuff behind the scenes, obviously, even after elections are done, before elections even start.
Right.
It's such a process. People think sometimes, just election season, that's the only time they would do anything. But no, absolutely not.
Not
Those
true.
guys are always working.
Right.
So
And
that
he's
was
so
cool.
excited about the new warehouse too. That came up
He
certainly.
is.
Yeah.
Yeah. So pretty cool stuff coming up with that elections warehouse. They're going to be closer to us now. So.
Yes. Yeah, we're going to be able to walk over there. But no, you're completely right. I mean, the guys at the warehouse, a small team, but they're working all year long on getting things ready for the next election. And even just like certifying the machine, which is open to the public. So if you ever want to see, it's incredibly exciting. But they're running hundreds of ballots through every machine, certifying the machines, every ballot face. And we can get into ballot faces, but we'll probably save that for an actual elections update. But just certifying the machines, making sure all the machines get to all the locations. We're the second largest county in the state. So we have a lot of locations for every election. It's not like even the small elections have fewer locations. No. Every election, we have the same number of locations because it's the number of people in the county. And so I think people do think that, I'm here to vote. And somehow all this equipment showed up.
And it's more than just the machines. It's the ballot supplies that are there, the pens, absolutely everything is.
All the printers, all the computers.
Yeah, the signs that are outside.
Yep.
That's all them. So we really
all
appreciate
that, all those
guys.
signs, everything gets proofed.
Yes.
Again and again and again. And so that's the guys are working on that a lot.
Yeah.
All the bags that all the machine judges and presiding judges have that have all the materials in there for them. Again, all that gets double checked and triple checked and proofed. And
It's a process.
it's all year long. I think people don't realize that we're
Yeah.
working on elections all year long.
No, it's not just a few days before. Cool. So the next episode was the St. Genevieve episode featuring Rosemary Leyva.
This is one of my favorites.
Why,
She is
Bern?
just-
Tell us.
She is just an amazing woman. Rosemary has such a wealth of knowledge, and the understanding of the history says that the church has such a valuable place in this culture here, and to move a church or to close a church from the downtown area was devastating in many people's lives. So she told the story so well. That's why I love this episode.
Yes.
Yeah.
She was an incredible storyteller.
Yes.
I wasn't part of this episode. I got to watch it from the background, and I was so it was so cool getting to actually just hear it. So
it was very fun because I think exactly what you said, Bern. At that time, the churches were so important to the community.
Right.
They were the meeting place. They were the historians. They took care of the burials.
Right.
Which is such an important part of history.
Right.
And to the point where I believe in their cemetery, there's 3,000 that they're still trying to identify.
Oh, wow.
And that's just one section of that giant
Right.
cemetery. But also, so it was like the life and death part, right? Like that's where they knew about new births, but that's also where they record deaths. So it was a lot of what Vital Statistics does now.
Right.
Was really what the church was doing for us at the time.
And all the marriages and births is right.
Baptisms,
Yeah.
all those things. So
Yeah.
pretty incredible history.
But Miss Leyva was an absolutely wonderful speaker. The book is very cool. Thank you for getting us the book, Bern. And then apparently I'm a cousin to Miss Leyva, so that was fun to figure out.
Yes.
That was fun to figure out.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, it was a very fun episode, very cool episode talking about the architecture of the church, where the church used to be, where it is now, things like that, how old some of the artifacts in the church are. Some of those artifacts came from France.
Yeah.
That is mind blowing when you
Yep.
think about
They're like, it's like
Cool.
400 years
Yeah.
old, and it's from France. And you're just like, wait, what? And that's sitting in the center of Las Cruces?
right,
Yeah.
right.
No, I think that's why it was one of my favorite episodes. Is my grandmother used to go to that church, so hearing like the history behind it was so cool.
Yeah.
I loved it.
How did we go from the adobe to the
That one?
beautiful Saint Genevieve we know?
Okay, in 1871, we had a new priest come in. It's Father Pierre Lesagne, and I got his picture in there too. Okay, he came in, and at the same time, the Loreto Academy had been built. And the Mother Superior, Mother Paraxis, talked to the father and said, we need a new church. The church is not big enough anymore. We have too many people. We can't fit everybody in there for Mass. So since Father Pierre was French, and he had just come from Tularosa, where they had built a church, and being French, they're going to use what the knowledge that they have. We ended up with a Gothic-looking church.
Wow, that is so interesting. I love that's the story, is because he was a French.
And what's really
French
interesting
priest.
is in that first tower, the one closest to the gate over here, that one, they built around the church.
The next one was fun. It was the business spotlight for
Yes.
Southwest Skydive, and those guys were awesome.
You were solo for that one. I think we
Oh,
were
was
both
I?
out.
Okay.
Yeah, so you got to
So
hang
me
out
and
with them.
Jacob
Yes,
kind
you
of
and
put it
Jacob.
together, and it
Can I
was
just-
a blast.
Can I just say, Bern, I love how much you love the skydiving, because I know your personal story to it and how your daughter went, and you were
Yes.
like, which of course I'm sure every mom is like, no, you're not going skydiving.
Yeah.
And then of course, she hurls herself out of a plane.
Why would you do that?
Yeah.
Well, now I had
yeah.
you considering doing it, maybe, right?
I did, but I've reconsidered.
Have you?
Yeah.
Yeah. No.
But also, I love that we're doing these business spotlights. We really are part of the business community in the county. I mean, so if you're in the city, you go to the city to get your business registration. But
Right.
if you're in the county, which we have a lot of rural areas, a lot of businesses in the county, then you come here to our office to register your business.
And they did that, and they
Yeah.
had such positive things to say. They thought it was going to be this big, long process, and they came in, and I actually helped them, which, again, I'm not up front all the time.
Yeah.
So I actually helped them. They were such nice young men, and I just said, put that in the back of my mind for a podcast. And sure enough, they agreed to come.
Good.
Yeah, it was great.
But I think it's pretty cool that we're doing these business spotlights
Yeah, I do
now.
too.
Yeah, so I'm really enjoying these ones. So thank you to you all for making the business spotlights happen.
Yes. So the next episode we had was honestly one of my favorites as well. Women in History and Politics, featuring Maggie Toulouse Oliver. That was pretty awesome.
This was a very fun episode. And I was kind of standing in the background, kind of watching it because they did it in my office. And this was between our clerk, Dr. Amanda Lopez Askin, and our Secretary of State, soon to be Dr. Maggie Toulouse Oliver. She's finishing her PhD.
Oh, good.
I think she's working on her dissertation right now. So there's actually a designation. It's called ABD, which is all but dissertation.
Oh, okay.
So when you finish like your coursework and you're working, just finishing up your dissertation.
Yeah.
So I think that's where she's at right now.
Final
so she's
stretch.
almost done. Final stretch.
Cool.
So yay to Maggie. But it was such a fun episode. It was, we were celebrating Women's History Month, speaking to these two like powerhouse women, and just talking about politics and women in politics and their experiences that they've had as women and being women in politics. It was just a very fun episode.
Yes, it was.
I wasn't there for the filming,
Yeah.
but I did watch it, and it was like, these women's voices are so powerful in such a subtle way, and yet they hold these offices that are so important. It moved me.
It's so cool to see how far we've come. It wasn't too long ago that women didn't even have the right to vote. So seeing these
Right.
incredible, smart women in these incredible roles it's amazing.
It is.
From your perspective, how do you think women lead differently than men?
Well, I think for one thing, we lead from our personal experience. And I think that that's very valuable because at the end of the day, there are just issues, challenges, life experiences, perspectives that women have. And this is, not a slight on men, but that just men don't have, right? They don't experience. And so, like, an example that I love to use is, I heard a story once of this very bipartisan coalition in Congress that happened when they were trying to pass Title IX to create equity in women's sports. And, former athletes from both the right and the left who were in Congress, women came together based on that experience of having been women in sports in high school and college and not having that equity to pass that bill. And they were talking about, this is what I went through when I tried to play basketball or soccer or run track or whatever when I was in high school and college. And so I think that that's really meaningful. But I also think women, at least I'll speak for myself and you from what I know, Amanda, of your leadership model. I work very collaboratively. I have a collaborative leadership style. Yes, at the end of the day, I make the final decision. The buck stops with me, but I really bring my team in to help me make these decisions because I want to make sure that there's buy-in. I want to make sure that whatever decision we make that we move forward with, that we have gone through everything, we've asked the questions, we've addressed the concerns, and even if we make a decision that some folks don't like, at least that has been discussed. And I'm not saying that men don't also have collaborative leadership style, but I think women, from what I understand and from the conversations I've had, more women have that kind of collaborative leadership style.
So episode 9 was one of my favorite episodes because we got to talk to Mr. Dale Owen, who, and we talked about the ranches of Doniana.
Yeah.
And I had no idea any of this stuff had happened. And so when you hear about how his family ranch was kind of taken over by the U.S. government and that this actually happened to about 95 families between here and Sandoval, and that kind of their ranches were kind of taken over and for White Sands Missile Range.
Yeah.
It's just such an interesting story to hear, and we just don't know it. And he may be one of the last surviving who actually lived on the ranches.
Yeah.
And so hearing his story was just a lot of fun, really interesting.
And shout out to his wife who basically helped me get him on board to come. I love that episode too, and I really appreciate that he took the time to share his story. His story is just history in the making.
Yeah, absolutely.
I just love that he had so much stories to tell because obviously his family had seen so much stuff happen in that area. He had stories about, who killed Pat Garrett and all that stuff. So it was pretty incredible to hear all of that from, I guess, a story that's taken down from generation to generation.
Yeah, and his grandfather, a physician.
Yeah.
Dr. Love, I believe.
One of the
Dr.
first
Love.
ones. Yeah, here in Doniana.
His grandson won an award for kind of telling that story, which I think was really cool.
Pretty incredible.
I want to ask you about when the government came in and took the land.
That's a whole different story. We got another hour. During World War II, Tularosa Basin was turned into a bombing range. The ranchers agreed to it. We're going to be patriotic. We're helping the country out. You can use our ranches as bombing ranges, which was the way it was. At the end of World War II, the Germans were working with V-2 rockets. When they lost, we had V-2 rockets going from Albuquerque on the train. V-2 rockets and V-2 rocket parts going from Albuquerque all the way here to Las Cruces. We have a bombing range, let's go ahead and start working there. And so they developed, what was it called? White Sands Proving Ground. Started working with the V-2 rocket. Those things weighed 5,000 pounds. And they said, we lease the land from these ranchers. We're going to rent the land. So they rented it from us for 20 years. So they shot the rockets up. We'd watch them go up the contrail and hear the motors, and then it stops. Okay, where's it coming down? We had one of them hit about a half mile from the house.
Oh, gosh.
They came in at the end of 20 years and got all the ranchers out at White Sands and said, we've been paying rent on this land for 20 years. We're taking it over. Get off. And they say, well, we've been making payments. No, that's rent money, you know. But so they came in and said, we're taking over, and kicked us off. Well, and the lease had that they would put on another 20-year renewal. We were waiting for that. No, they didn't do that. They didn't put on the new 20-year renewal. Just get off. And they started kicking us all off. It was a mean situation. It's they don't like me to talk.
So our next episode 10, was the story of the indigenous history of Doña Ana County, something that can get forgotten because, unfortunately, we rely so much on documents and the written word, and the indigenous people, that wasn't their forte. And so we had Dr. Gregorio Gonzalez on to share their story, and he brought some music with him. Yes. He brought his guitarra and sang to us.
Te riegan tus campos, mi tierra encantada, de lindas mujeres que no tiene igual. Así es Nuevo México, así es esta tierra del sol. De sierras y valles, de tierras frutales, así es Nuevo México.
He was such a fun guest. I think he was just so passionate about, the indigenous history here. And so it was pretty cool to hear everything that he had to say.
That was such a fun episode. And I did not sit in on that episode. Not because I'm not a fan of this story and the content was fantastic, but I went to high school with Greg.
Oh, nice.
And college. And so we would have ended up just chit-chatting the whole time. And so I was like, I better not sit in on this episode.
You would have sang like 5 more songs. No, that was awesome. We loved it.
It was awesome. People in the office, even though we had the door closed, they could hear the guitar.
They were all putting their ear
and
up
they
to
were
the
all,
door.
they were trying to hear what on earth are the podcast crew doing now.
Yeah. So awesome.
Cool. So after that, we had episode 11, which was with Judge Judy Baca, who is our probate judge. Yeah. And that was also with Assistant County Manager Macias.
Yes.
Jonathan Macias came and talked with us. And this was part 2. We've done a part 1 before. And so we continued the conversation, which was a really good episode. I think people come in here. Their office is basically within our office. And we are also the clerk of the probate judge. And so we do see a lot of folks here for probate. We do get a lot of calls and questions about probate. And it's just something like I'm not very familiar with probate.
Yeah.
And so I think it's a really good episode. I think folks like to hear about this and learn about it more.
I think what I liked about the episode is it sounds like kind of a scary topic, probate, like thinking about what's going to happen after you pass away. But I think Judge Judy Baca made it seem so, easy to relate to. She made it more comfortable of a conversation to have. And she talked to us about the importance of it.
And it definitely is the more comfortable probate court in town.
Yeah.
It's much less formal than the probate court over at district court.
Right.
So we get a lot of people here that appreciate that flexibility, that informal setting, and the fact that they can speak to their judge pretty much any time that she's in the office.
Yeah, absolutely.
And she loves performing those ceremonies too for the weddings.
Does.
Yeah,
so cute.
She
puts
does a
on
great
her purple
service.
robe.
Yes.
I love it. Cool. So the next episode that we had was the Village of Doña Ana featuring David Thomas, and we've had him on here before, but it was another incredible topic.
It's not only an incredible topic, we decided to do something different. We decided to film our work our video out in Doña Ana County and
on a field trip.
So the weather was not very cooperative. The dogs in the neighborhood were not cooperative. Yes. We had such a good time though.
Yeah.
And we ended up editing back here. Jacob's Magic came into play, and we just really enjoyed having him on. He is just such a wealth of knowledge.
He's so passionate about everything he talks about, and I don't know how he remembers everything, because he'll remember the year exactly and the people that were involved, and I'm just like, how.
It's his
Yeah.
passion. It's just
Yeah.
his passion.
Awesome.
And he'll be on, I'm sure, again for us. We have other topics to discuss with him.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
So here's a clip from the episode with Mr. David Thomas.
What was life like for people of Doña Ana, and what drew them to this particular area?
Well, it was extremely harsh, just like northern Mexico, because it was desert.
Right.
And in order to settle, you had to, and to grow crops, to feed yourself, you had to have an irrigation ditch. And in Spanish, an irrigation ditch is called a sequía, and the main ditch is called the acequia madre. There were problems with the weather, there were problems with food, and so on. So on September 18th, 1839, a man named Jose Maria Gonzalez submitted a petition to the government of El Paso del Norte for himself and 15 other men to settle at a place known as Dona Ana.
Okay.
It was a campsite on the Camino Real, which is called a pareje. So it was the Mesilla Valley was considered a very lucrative, fertile place to settle if you could irrigate the land.
Right.
In January of 1843, he got permission to leave for the site. And it was on the east side of the river. The river was very bendy, very twisted at the time. And this site was on a large loop of the river known as a bend. And so eventually the colony became known as Dona Ana Bend Colony.
The next episode I want to go ahead and talk about is The Mystery of Mary Waters. And we had Mr. Salvatore Patricolo. This was such a fun episode.
It was.
This was like a kind of mystery episode, but also like his reverence for the family
Yes.
was like really beautiful. And I think for his reasoning behind even looking into the topic of being like, she was a person. Like we can't just like dismiss her. Like she was a person. She had children. She still has, some of her grandchildren are still here with us. And so I think his respect for the family and for her as a person, and why he even wanted to tell the story and start history and the researching of her
Yeah.
story was really wonderful, I think.
Yes, I think it was so incredible to hear that, he wasn't trying to make it a scary story. He tried to humanize what happened to Miss Mary Waters and kind of just give her story that she deserves. And
Right.
so it was pretty beautiful.
He was very sensitive to the family's needs.
Yes.
And I really liked that and appreciated that about him. And just, he actually bought the headstone
Yeah.
for her. And that speaks volumes about how he feels about Mary Waters.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he's working on several projects too to kind of find unmarked graves in our oldest cemeteries. So
Yeah, we're gonna have to have. I think we should do a couple grave stories next year
I think,
because
yes.
we have our cemetery stories. I think we should do it because there's some really interesting history surrounding graves here in Doña Ana County.
absolutely.
Put that on season 5 list.
Yep,
keep
put it
adding
on
to
the
it.
list.
Yep.
Um,
But thank you, Sal, for coming.
Yeah,
That was
absolutely.
Absolutely fantastic.
and
in
one of our
terms-
ghost stories. We have a thing for ghost stories. We really
do.
do.
They're
We
my
like
favorite.
that.
Yeah, it started off as a ghost story, but then kind of talking to Sal and why he's like, is this really a ghost story?
Yeah.
And so, but no, it was a really, really fantastic story. So we hope that you listen to that. And here is a clip of this episode.
As I'm reading this story and digging through and ancestry and finding a grave and all these other things, I'm finding out that nobody knows who she is. Nobody has a clue. Nobody's ever visited her. Nobody's ever paid attention to her. The ghost story can build up because,
She's without a voice.
yeah, she's without a voice. So what I did is I went to the Masonic Cemetery and I had them, dig through their records, and we actually found the record based on this. And I found the record and I went out looking for it, and I couldn't find anything. And so I got one of the gentlemen that works at Monty. You must think I'm a pain in the neck by now, but and we were looking for it, and he just said, "You're standing on her," and I was like, "There's nothing here." So we convinced the Masonic eventually to make a marker which we updated. I've been able to tie her parents to her children, and any documents I can find that shows that she actually lived. She was an actual person. It wasn't a ghost. She was an actual person.
Right.
And then we are getting her a headstone.
Oh,
That is fantastic.
And the thing is, after 74 years, her family may or may not know where she is. I'm guessing they don't, because nobody's ever taken care of the grave before. And what I think is, would they care? I think so. But the other is, if she is haunting, if she is, maybe this will give her some chance to rest or to get some peace,
Right.
to know she was alive, that she did exist. She had a really rough, hard life, and she's here. She's here in this town.
So our next episode was episode 14, and that was Bellama Homes featuring Dr. Jerry Wallace, and that was another incredible episode.
You just look at the neighborhoods and you see the replication of neighborhoods.
Yes.
And it's amazing the thought process that Dale Bellama had in order to create that reality.
I didn't even realize my aunt lived at one of the Bellama homes
Oh, is
back
that right?
in like the 90s, early 2000s, and then when I saw clips of it, I was like, oh my gosh, that house is familiar to me. And it just like screams Las Cruces to me, those kinds of houses.
Right.
So pretty
Right.
cool.
So I didn't get to join you all for this episode, but it was such a good episode. And it's always fun how like all this kind of ties in, or at least for me personally. But like my grandparents lived in the Bellama homes. Like my
Wow.
uncle still lives in their house.
Yeah.
Off of Solar. And so like that neighborhood, it's just, I'm very familiar with that neighborhood because we were kind of always there and things like that. And so just talking about the Bellama homes, and I thought how Dr. Wallace, like how he's so into the history, our local history. And just like some of the other projects that he's done are just, it's very cool. It was a very good episode. Very fun.
Yeah. And I thank him so much for coming and sharing that historical perspective with us.
Yeah.
It's not just a building, it's a concept.
Another great
Yes.
speaker. He really
Yeah,
had
he really did.
so much knowledge on it.
Yeah.
It was incredible.
Yeah. That was a very fun episode. Thank you for that one all.
So next was episode 15, and that was about the Doniana Village Historic Preservation Committee featuring Triano Hasso.
We brought in the young blood.
Yes.
This
young
is a very
kid.
cool episode. And I love that we have young people who are in love with history.
Yes.
And who are involved in things like the Doniana County or Doniana Village Historic Preservation Committee.
Yeah.
Like, I think that is so cool. And that there are young people who love their history.
Yes. And he's had family involved in it for such a long time. And I think it was just natural for him to be involved in it as well because he
Right.
loves history.
He
so
loves history.
it was a
He's
great
going to be a
conversation.
history teacher.
Yes.
Yeah, and he did a great job representing his group and telling us about the history of Doniana,
Right.
the church in Doniana. He just went through it all and made it come alive for me. You know, we have a couple of episodes on Doniana because it's just such a vibrant part of our county.
Also, Bert, I want to point out that because you've done such a great job, and I don't know if you're intentionally doing it, but if you're not, good job. But like we did the episode of Why is Doniana called Doniana?
Yes.
I think season 1.
Right.
To doing episodes like this, but we've done several episodes on Doniana and the history of Doniana. So if you have not watched episode from season 1, Doña means like it's like a term of endearment for an older woman, like La Doña Ana. So we think that there was a woman who the county is named after.
Right. And he talked about that.
And I love that. I love
Yeah.
that. And really just kind of how all these episodes kind of play into each
Yeah.
other. It's been really, 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 if you're following our podcast, then you know.
And we've talked to everybody who does talk about the village of Doniana, like, hey, what's your take on how the village got its name? And they've all said the same thing, that
Right.
there's a few different little variations, but for the most part, they've all said it came from Doniana Robledo. So
Right.
cool.
Yep. So the next one was another favorite of mine, and we had Teddy Moreno join us again, and we talked about the Lomans.
Yes.
And I think why this is one of my favorite. One, Teddy always brings me either a really cool map or a really cool picture. This time she also brought us some mineral water, which is
crazy
very,
water.
some of the crazy water.
good. I
it
liked
was
it.
good. I was like, oh, this is cool.
I got crazy number 4,
Yeah.
which
Did
is
you?
the
That's
highest
right. I think I got
content.
2. I
Yeah.
Kind of
forget.
salty.
Yeah.
That's funny. But this was just a very fun episode. I really hope that Teddy writes a book.
Yes, she needs to.
Yeah, because her passion for Shablin's story is so amazing.
It is.
And when she was telling us about how she like went and visited his burial site,
Right.
I was like, girl,
Dedication.
dedication, passion. I love it.
And it's like
um,
her whole family is just like, all right.
right,
let's
like her
go.
husband and her daughter was like, all right, let's go find it. Yep. Which I really love. And so I really hope that she writes a book.
Yes.
On the on,
You hear
on
us,
the
Teddy?
history.
You got to write the book.
Hey, Teddy, we know you're
We're gonna
watching.
keep bugging you about it.
We know that you watch the podcast, Teddy, and so this is us saying,
Yeah.
please write the book.
I think I like the episode too because I've always heard the name Loman. Obviously, our major street is Loman, and so getting to see the pictures behind what it meant and everything was pretty awesome. I didn't know he was our first mayor, so it was cool getting to hear all that. And
Also, hearing the
see
story,
pictures.
if I'm remembering the episode correctly, kind of the love story behind it too.
Yeah.
Where like the wife and child were traveling quite a bit to New York,
Right.
and how he would go to visit them, kind of
Yeah.
missing them.
Yeah.
And so I thought that was also an interesting
And we
part
know
of the
that
story.
that trip to New York
At the time was
At the
not
time
an easy trip.
was-
Just
yeah.
fly
That was
plane
like
there.
weeks
Yeah.
and weeks of travel,
Right.
maybe, like at least days, at least a week
Yeah.
of travel, maybe multiple weeks of travel just to get across the country.
right.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I'm upset, and it takes, it's a 6-hour direct flight if you're lucky, and I'm still angry.
Wasting my time.
Yeah. So I can imagine what they were going through.
Martin came from a pretty well-to-do family in Missouri, and he came to New Mexico when he was only 22 years old. He came about 1876. He came to work for Lazinski and Company, and I'm not even sure if I'm pronouncing that right. He worked for two brothers, and he worked in their store for quite a while. He met a clerk there named Numa Raymond. He worked with him as they were both clerking, and eventually they decided to buy out the Lazinskis. Eventually, Martin bought out Numa, and so Martin was the sole owner of that. And from there, his business just took off. He was very successful. He was one of the most eligible bachelors. So everybody was interested in him because of his wealth and his good looks. And he seemed to have a pretty good head on his shoulders as far as, things that were happening in the community, and he wanted to help improve the community. And he became friends with Jacob Shoplin. They worked together to get the college started.
So our 17th episode was with Anton from Moy Surveying. I was so happy that he joined us because he's another one, like Chris. He's always in the office. And it's like, okay, it's nice to see a familiar face, but what are you doing here?
Like, what's the story behind
What's
this?
your story?
Yes.
So he told us his story.
Yes.
And it was very interesting. Again, the cooperation between the offices here in our county building, the assessor and community development and the county clerk all work together to help out a business like Moy Surveying, who's serving the people.
Yeah, and I mean, we had a surprise fire alarm happen during that.
That
so-
was funny.
Anytime.
Are you kidding?
Seriously?
Fire break.
He took it like a champ, though.
He did.
Kept rolling with it. So he could have easily been like, all right, well, I'm out.
I really love the business spotlights. I
Yes.
really do. Surveying is such a big part of the community. Whether you're wanting to separate your property into multiple properties, or if you're, again, that's like subdividing. If you maybe received a property from a death in the family,
Right.
and then you're like, okay, so where are the actual property lines? Like surveying is so important,
Yes.
just from a legal and property standpoint, and I just find it fascinating. So that was a really fun. I wasn't on that episode, but that was a really good one to listen to.
Yeah, he really knows his stuff, and it's a family business for him, so he's really
Right.
passionate about it.
Right.
It's really awesome.
And
Moy
I
Surveying
talked to
has
his
been around.
mom all the
do
time
you
from
really?
the office. Yeah.
Oh, nice.
So I made sure when we had the video ready,
Yeah.
Jacob told me send it to him, So I'm writing an email and I said, don't forget to send it to your mom, your biggest fan, because she's a sweet lady.
Oh,
she's
cool.
she's
I
really,
love that, Bern. I love it, love it, love it. But no, I love hearing these stories and these business spotlights and hearing about these family-owned business. Moy Surveying did my parents'
Is that
property.
right? Wow.
And gosh, that was 38 years ago.
Wow.
Maybe, yeah, 39.
Wow.
And so they've been around a very long
Yeah.
time, and they're very entrenched in the community. And I'm sure if we go and look through deeds, there's going to be a lot of Moy surveying.
Right.
And there's a lot of other great surveyors in the county. I don't want to say that they're not.
Right.
But I love that we did a business spotlight on surveying. I think it's very cool and a very like family owned business. And I just love like the history of it too. Just a lot of folks involved in the business.
Absolutely. So our next episode is kind of split up into 2 parts. Episode 18 was Ranches to Rockets featuring Jim Eccles, and episode 19 was a follow-up to that. So 2 parts to that episode.
Bern, how did you find this one?
This one found me.
You really love.
He
Tell
is
me.
part of the Historical Society in Doña
Bern,
County.
are you part of the Historical Society?
I go when I can.
Good.
I
You
go
should
when
be a
I-
member.
Yeah, I should be a member. That's where a lot of people who really care about history congregate, share their stories, share their goodness. And Jim Eccles was one of them. And he came highly recommended from others. And finally, we got him on board. Yes. And he told the story. Part 1 was the ranches side of the story, and part 2 was the rocket side of the story. And it was just a fabulous historical perspective on what happened in this county when World War II came out.
This was kind of a different side of the fence from Mr. Owen's perspective,
Right.
we talked about earlier, because he was one of the ranchers. He lived on the ranch. His family had one of the ranches that was taken over for White Sands Missile Range. But then this was kind of from the perspective of the missile range and the history behind World War II and what happened after World War II.
That's
and
right.
All the technology, the rockets that came out of after World War II and after the beginning of World War II. And so this was kind of like another side of the story.
Right, it really was. And even though he gave great presence to the ranchers, he told their story as well. It's just mind-boggling to me that this little city, this little county, this little area has such historical presence in the world, in world history. And he told it really well.
Also, if there are any history teachers listening, I hope that this starts getting taught in schools. This is such interesting New Mexico history.
Truly is.
That I had never known much about, like, ever. And I mean, I hope that when they're redoing the New Mexico history curriculum next, that they think about this.
Right.
Yeah.
I had no clue until we had these guests on. So
and it's so interesting. Like it can, like the story can really take off from before World War II and then through the history of World War II to present day. It's still an active military base.
Right.
Like really, like there's so much history just from White Sands and that missile range in that area. It would, I think, I hope there's a history teacher listening.
Maybe we should talk a little bit about the history of rocketry because it does have a tie here to southern New Mexico. The people here in Las Cruces, they really don't know what they're getting. 240 rail cars filled with V2 stuff were unloaded here in Las Cruces. Beginning in 1946, all that material that came through Las Cruces over to there starts to be tested and assembled. General Electric has the contract. So the first firing of a V2 engine, just the engine, is in March of 1946. In the next month, in April, they actually had a flight of a V2 from the launch complex and didn't do very well. It only went up 3.5 miles and they terminated it. However, you got to give the Army credit. Even with that failure, the next month in May, they invited the world to watch through the news media. Everybody's watching, and it did exactly what it was supposed to do. So that started the sounding rocket program at White Sands Missile Range.
This has been our longest season so far.
Right.
20 episodes. You all outdid yourself this year.
Burn.
Really, you all did an amazing job. I can't.
Thank you.
I can't tell you all enough how great of a job you all are doing, and bringing in history and business spotlights and election information to our viewers. And Shout out to everyone online who watches and listens. Thank you. We're trying to tell the good stories is what we're trying to do here.
Yeah, we have some loyal listeners.
We do have some loyal listeners.
I love it.
Yeah, I agree. A few have reached out to me on LinkedIn.
Nice.
Yeah, and so thank you for that, and thank you for listening. Thank you for wanting to learn about Doña Ana and our history.
And if you have a story to tell,
yes, let us
reach
know.
out to us. Reach out to us.
Provide that email. But I'm excited for season 5. It's going to be even better. And we have a special announcement coming soon about season 5.
I know. So we're going to take a little break because we have some planning to do for season 5. And we also have some room reconfiguration that needs to happen that we are very excited for. So shout out to our amazing team and our amazing staff. Thank you to Jacob Slaughter, who is our editor, podcast producer extraordinaire behind camera. We don't make this happen without Jacob. Thank you to Cynthia Mendoza, our communications coordinator, and for all that she does in making sure that we are on track and that we are talking to guests and we're getting all those things happening. Thank you to Bernardine Caporale, our researcher extraordinaire, who does amazing things for us and brings us some really cool topics, and all of your love for our history.
Oh, I do love it.
You do love it.
I do love it.
You
I'm
know,
addicted.
You really are. And thank
Yeah.
you for being a New Yorker and coming to New Mexico and falling in love with our history, Bert.
You taught us so much about our own county.
You
that we
really
didn't know.
have, Bert. You really have.
I'm surprised I got this position, but here I am, and I'm loving it.
Good.
Yeah.
And of course, thank you to our amazing clerk, Dr. Amanda Lopez Askin, who, when we say, hey, we have an idea, she's like, go with it.
And thanks to you, because you do the same thing. You're like, yeah, go for it. Yeah, I believe in you guys. And that's how we got here.
Yeah. And I'm like,
in us.
yeah. And you all keep blowing me away. And so my name is Caroline Zamora. I'm the Chief Deputy County Clerk. Thank you for listening and watching the Preserving History and Democracy podcast produced by the Doña Ana County Clerk's Office. We will see you next season.